All right, we are recording. Well, thank you everyone for attending our panel on learning through the pandemic today as a student perspective. My name is Patty Wild and I'm English faculty at Washington State University. I'll be one of the facilitators. Chris Vink.
Oh, I get to introduce myself. I'm Chris Vink. I teach at Portland Community College. My pronouns are she, hers, and actually Patty and I met at Portland Community College where we talked together.
Yes, 2005, I think it was, when Chris got the online writing lab up and running.
For any of you guys that have ever watched Grey's Anatomy, Patty is my person.
I don't know that reference, but I'm sure it's mutual. I'm sure it's mutual. We've certainly been through a lot. All right, so we'll begin the panel. We've prepared 5 predetermined questions, and I put those in the chat so you can follow along. And then once we go through those questions, we'll take questions from the audience. Sorry, I'm looking at the chat and trying to follow along. And
I can try to monitor the chat, Patty.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. So we'll go through our questions. Everyone will have a chance to respond. And then attendees, please feel free to post questions in the chat or the Q&A. And then we'll take those after we complete our 5 predetermined questions. But let's turn it over to the people we really want to hear from today, and that's our students. So I'm going to go ahead, Teresa, since you are in my Brady Bunch left-hand corner, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll just, once Teresa finishes, someone please feel free to follow up, and then once we conclude our introductions, we'll go through our first question. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Teresa Montes, and I am attending YVCC for a DTA in nursing, WSU. And it's online, all my learning.
Awesome. My name is Tice Winship. I go to Portland Community College. I am hoping to transfer to Arizona State University for anthropology. I'm completely online. I was online before, so the pandemic hasn't changed anything for me, but online only.
And my name is Miranda Tankersley. My maiden name's on here. My pronouns are she, her. I go to Portland Community College, and I'm hoping for a transfer degree to Portland State University and majoring in psychology. And I have been online only. In fact, my first term was the first term that everything went completely online. So the only experience I have in college is online. So
hi, I'm Ramsey McGashey. I'm at YVC, Yakima Valley Community College. My major is computer science for a direct transfer agreement, hopefully going to a 4-year state school afterwards. And the first quarter I was only in person, and then since the pandemic hit, I've been only online.
All right, I'm Delaney Gorton. I'm at Lewis Clark State College right now I'm getting a degree in English secondary education, and I'm doing it all right now. I'm doing online classes, I'm doing hybrid classes, and I still have a few face-to-face classes as well.
And my name is Samuel Butler. I go to Mount Hood Community College. I'm just taking my general studies right now. I have goals to eventually take my paramedics and become a firefighter. And most of my classes are online, but I do have some in-person labs.
Hi, I'm Stacey Rodriguez, and I go to CWI and U of I. I am studying criminology and psychology. I have done online since the pandemic. I did have some classes in person, but everything got switched to online, so I am learning the online process.
Great, thank you all. And again, let me just extend my gratitude that you all agreed to be here and share your experiences with us today. With that, I'm gonna go ahead and offer the first question, and then we'll go around in a similar fashion and you can provide your responses. And the first question is, what have been the biggest challenges for you in learning through the pandemic?
For me, it has been trying to navigate this whole technology thing. And yes, I'm not that old, but I'm not tech savvy. So that has been a bit of a challenge. And as well as I'm an on-hands learner. So like I learn by doing and not just by reading.
For me, the biggest challenge has been just like the emotional stress of everything. Like last week during the election, or the week before, I don't even know when it was. I was like so stressed out from the election. I got a cold. I thought it was COVID. I got the test. It was negative. And it's just like the last thing I wanted to do was homework. And I just felt like I didn't have the availability to like ask for a week off, you know? So that's been like the biggest thing for me. It's just having that like emotional stress from everything, of the pandemic, the election, of life, of everything. And it's been a little too much sometimes.
For me, I have 2 school-age kids at home who are 100% online learning as well. So it's trying to juggle my school time with helping them with their school time, and my husband's an essential worker. So then it's also the little bit of, the financial worry, but also like the emotional and this, he's out in the public and he's coming home, and then just sort of the isolation is still really hard to deal with.
Yeah, so for me, partially emotional because 2 to 3 weeks there, I was like struggling with keeping up with my classwork and had to tell like a couple of my professors that I would need more time for certain assignments, and luckily they're understanding and granted them. And then also like I'm also like I like the presence of actually being in classroom, so I feel like yeah, definitely the technical like transition has been hard. Um, because it's just harder to keep my focus on things and not check my smartphone every 10 minutes if I get bored or I'm in a struggling. So one thing I've been doing is just like I set up a whole nother account on my laptop, and I just switch to that whenever I'm doing my classwork, so that I don't have all these like distractions that were on my regular desktop. So that's been somewhat helpful dealing with it, but it's definitely still not as good as in-person classes for me personally.
I would take note, instructors. I thought Ramsey's idea was great there. But we'll get a chance to follow up and ask students about how they think they can help other students as well as we move forward in our conversation today. But thank you for that response.
I think for me, I have a daughter that's disabled and she's deaf. So all the services that were provided had been turned to online, and me just barely learning ASL and doing my schoolwork was a challenge, trying to be more supportive for her and put my needs behind. Financially, we went from a 2-income household to a 1. I got put on furlough for 6 months. The isolation and the depression and the fear kicked in, just not knowing what was going to happen. And then just trying to be a very good support system for my daughter and trying to make sure that she's getting the proper education and the extra help. But there was a lot of hats I had to wear because of the services that she needed. So.
For me, I would say that I am definitely an in-person school taker. I don't prefer taking classes online. I like the environment of going somewhere instead of feeling stuck at home. And then I also just love getting to meet people and classmates. So then knowing that we both have similar goals to, pass the class and that kind of thing. So I felt like definitely there was a lack of that. And I would say also it's just there's times where it's difficult when you're at home. Some of you have shared about kids or just even parents just being in the area can be kind of distracting in that sense. But you just kind of have to learn how to maneuver around that and just kind of put your times when you're not free and when you're kind of occupied.
I think my biggest issues have been navigating online classes because there's a lot of different windows and aspects of online classes that add up to a lot. And then speaking to, again, that isolation, that feeling of being trapped. I'm living in a residence hall, so I'm not quite as socially isolated as others may be. But that comes with the added stress of living in a residence hall with other people, where there's constantly changing of the rules and what you have to be doing and what the regulations are. So keeping on top of all of these new things coming at you all of the time kind of does add up to a lot of mental work.
Question 3, Patty? I think okay, so question 3 is describe your online learning experiences, or I think even some of your hybrid face-to-face experiences that have changed with quarantine.
Excuse me, Chris. I'm getting messages in the chat that the attendees can't hear you. Can you maybe adjust? Delaney, would you mind muting your mic? We're wondering if there's a suggestion that that perhaps that was overpowering Chris's ability to speak. Thank you.
You want me to try?
It's still, yeah, I think it's still. Okay.
You go for it, Patty.
Okay. So describe your online learning experiences, or as Chris was saying, your hybrid learning experience or face-to-face experiences. What kinds of approaches or activities have worked well? What should instructors avoid doing? And if you could provide specific examples, that would be great.
So I have a professor that does every time we're gonna take a test or a quiz, he asks for our suggestion, what question should he kind of pose or place on that quiz or test. And that way we can study that section, and that has been helpful for me. The other thing that has not been helpful was kind of like homework overload and the technology part of things, like where you have to scan the paper and then try to submit it. But yet sometimes when you submit it, the teacher cannot see it because you have to write super dark or write it in a pen and then redo the whole thing and try to scan it again and resend it so you get all your points. That has been a challenge for me. But the other professor that I have with the questions for the test, pre-made or pre-asked before our exam, that is very helpful.
Yeah, what my suggestion would kind of piggyback with Teresa. If it's online, it should be online. So there shouldn't be nothing you have to print. There shouldn't be any like books you have to order. Like, let's have ebooks. Let's, do everything online. The technology is there. It's easy to convert a little things. But for me, since I've been online before, what works best for me is like in the desire to learn, which is what we use at PCC, there's like weekly modules. And I like it when the weekly module is one weekly module. There's not like a Sunday you have stuff due, but then the following Wednesday, there's discussion posts due. Like, I like it from Monday to Sunday, 1 week at a time. So for me, that personally works better, just so I can plan my week and not have to like think about this week opens up, but then last week's also open and I still have stuff due last week that's due this week. And it gets a little confusing sometimes when you have 3 other classes.
Yeah, 100% to what Tice was saying. I feel like a rhythm is super important for me, coming from, it's been, 20 plus years since I was in high school. So for me, the only thing keeping me successful and getting me the good grades I have is I actually am able to map everything out in my week and schedule it. So I do agree that sort of knowing that I have every Wednesday I have discussion responses due, and every Sunday I have this due, and it's always the same instead of sort of everywhere, really, really helps the consistency. I also really like when instructors do Zoom lectures. just because hearing somebody and watching somebody talk and explain the material, or even having that sort of like live person there, I find even just for like an hour a week is super helpful. And also I had a women's studies course I took, and she didn't require any textbooks. And I know that's not possible with every subject, but given the financial worries and everything going on with the pandemic, we use things like YouTube videos and memes and articles, and it was a lot of material. But we were able to digest it sort of like in real time, and it didn't require a textbook, which was really nice.
So for me, the approaches or activities that worked the best for me were like ones that required some sort of like creative input from the student. So whatever that may be, like you have to think of something yourself in response to a certain question or something like that, and not just like a rote memorization response from a textbook or something like that. So that's like the thing, those are like the activities for me that were the best. And then what didn't work so well is kind of like the opposite, where you just have kind of the standard form of answer this question that you should have learned about by reading your textbook, over and over again, so that you memorize everything. For me, that's just like, it's just too dull. And especially I guess in like an actual in-person environment, it's not as bad because you can like participate in the class and things like that. So it's not as bad if it's just like rote, kind of looking at your textbook, find the answer. But when it's online and you're just literally, just staring at a textbook on a screen instead of like actually being asked questions by your professor in class, it's just a bit too dull, and it's like hard for me to keep my attention on those kinds of assignments.
Yeah, I have something to add with that. Chris has done a good job at, like, every week there's something different. Like one week there was a TED Talk. The next week there's a podcast. One week there's a magazine article. And it seemed like that multimedia of different things every week makes it enjoyable. And I kind of has to go with Ramsey's, like that interaction of being creative and stuff, like makes it less heavy every week.
I think for me, time management was a very key thing for me, just because of my daughter and her needs. I personally like the textbook more so than reading things online, just because it was an easy distraction for me. I've done online classes, but I did all the ones that were the easy ones for me to learn. So when it came during the pandemic, I had all the classes that I needed to be in person to get that extra support, that extra, encouragement to keep going. And it was difficult just because there was a lot of, a lot of homework that was due, a lot of it on the same days. And you were only given a certain amount of time. It was just challenging having children and having household stuff and trying to meet all the classes because I was a full-time student. I think that's where I find the struggle was, but I enjoyed the Zoom lectures because it was interesting, because what I felt was I may not be the only one that has that question or needs that help or doesn't understand the assignment. And it was helpful to know that other people were struggling with that. And I didn't feel so dumb because I didn't know what I was doing. So I really liked that part. I liked the fact that the professors would make some time to meet with each student to make sure that, one, they weren't struggling emotionally, financially, how they could assist. That was a big thing for me. I had a lot of good professors that would reach out to me and say, okay, is there anything that I can help you with? What are you struggling with? When they would look at a test that comes in and I'm not doing so well, it's like, okay, what did you struggle with? What is it that we can help? So that way you're prepared for your final. So I enjoyed that, but I do like the books in person more so than the online. My eyes were just so tired all the time after I would read so much. So
I'd agree with that, and I actually kind of expand on it too. I feel like a lot of times online classes end up being much more work than in-person classes. And that's just because what a professor can explain in 15 minutes might take 2 hours to read about and get the same understanding. So that is, I guess, something to be wary of if you are building an online class. Because in-person instruction, you get your 2.5, 3 hours a week, and online classes typically take much more than that to get the same understanding. To that end, Zoom classes are super helpful because you get that face-to-face sort of interaction that a lot of people are missing. You get that kind of social experience, especially if people have their cameras on. You get to look at faces, which is exciting. And yeah, you get to speak to the professor directly. So if you do have a question, you can ask it and they can respond in real time. So you don't have to wait on an email or anything like that. My other bit of grief with online classes is that everything is so non-standard, and I've heard people speak to that already. So with some classes, you got to scan in like paper that you printed and all of that stuff. So making between classes even a little bit more standard about where is material, where can I find it, what kind of assignments do I have to be doing, and how. And I definitely agree, like if your class is online, you shouldn't have to print anything because there's no way to turn it in without having to scan it, which is just more pieces of technology and it's more expense that you really don't need with an online format.
I would say for me, when the pandemic kind of started and like the spring term, I chose to take in-person classes and then found out they were all online. And so my classes are chemistry, biology, anatomy. These are not really classes you really want to take online. So there's a struggle with that. But some things that I did like with teachers, what they did is they made really good lecture videos. They were interactive. They weren't just words on a screen and you're just trying to go through it. I will say a positive thing with doing online is you can pause and play whenever you want. You can take notes and you can kind of go back and forth with that. And with it, you can kind of watch for an hour and go do something and come back. And I would say there's some cons with that, would just kind of be with that, it's hard to like ask questions with your teachers because it's like, oh, you know, it'd be so much easier when you have a question, you just raise your hand and wait a few minutes and you can ask that question. But it's like, oh, and this part of the video, can you explain? You know, it's so much kind of more work. And I will say I've had some teachers that have pulled a lot of videos from YouTube and just said, watch this. And I kind of felt like my worth as a student trying to learn just wasn't the same. It just, I get how there's a reference video, but I would say as a student, we would like to see lecture videos that the teachers make, because then it shows that your effort's there, and then that makes me want to put my effort into.
I would really strongly agree with that as well. It's, if you're paying for an education, you don't want to get it from YouTube. It feels like it devalues the whole experience. And I had one other thought about lecture videos. I have some professors that do it really well, but it is a really passive form of learning. So even if you're taking notes, it is information that is just going across the screen. So I'm not sure what your professor is doing that makes it really interactive, and I'd love to hear more about that if you have some more to say about it. But yeah, getting that kind of interaction I think is really critical.
Do you want to add to that, Samuel?
I mean, I guess at least the teachers that I had, I mean, I don't even remember exactly like what made it so much more interactive. I felt like, okay, one of the big things is just they have few words on their slides. So it's more, I think, a reminder for what the teacher needs to say. So you're not just reading off of a screen, because then you have to, I don't know, you can read on certain things, but you're listening to it, you're taking notes, and I don't know, there's different varieties of, I guess, teaching in that sense, but I'd say the big one that I noticed the most was I dislike when teachers are just reading off and then they click the next slide and they're just reading off, and I'm like, okay, I could be doing this now. And then I'm just reading a PowerPoint slide to myself, and, you know, so.
If it's all right, I would like to deviate from the next question for a second, because we got a question that seems to appropriate to address in this moment when we're talking about online learning. And the question asks, how do you feel about discussion postings? Any suggestions?
I personally do not like them. just because I have a busy life as it is. Like I have children, I have to cook, I have to clean, and then I have to do more homework for other classes. And it's like I don't have all the time to just sit by a computer and wait for someone to post a question and a response. And then sometimes you have to do multiple responses, not just one, to get the credit for that. I'm not a fan of that. But if needed to, I will do it.
Teresa, if I may ask a just clarifying question, is it the fact that you have to respond to a certain amount of students or have like an exchange that makes it more difficult?
Yes, if it was just a response once and then that's it. But no, most of the instructors that I've had that they have those discussion forums, it's like more than once response to one of them had like 4 different students and they couldn't be the same students. So
I like discussion posts. I think if it's just a discussion post and maybe one other thing for the week, it's great. But if it's like discussion posts, homework, lab, reading, videos, music videos, whatever, it's too much. But if it's just like you're reading for the week, this is like your assignment discussion post, respond to 2 people. I like it because there's some sort of interaction within the students, and I get to know like, oh, Teresa this is her writing style, and I really like how she does responses and stuff. And I try to respond to people who haven't responded to anyone, or like that no one's responded to them, I should say. And so it's for me, it's like I always try to make it really positive. So I'm always like, great post, like good job, I really enjoyed it. So to me, it's like some positive energy for the week that I really like. So like for me, like I appreciate that.
I kind of agree with both of you guys for that. It does feel like it really drags down your week if you have to wait on other people to post before you can reply to them. But I do really see the value in getting that interaction with peers, especially in a way that lets them really think through their thoughts before they get to share them. And that's me being an English major. So getting a chance to have that gathering of thoughts, have that ability to respond in a really thoughtful way, I think is valuable. But about them, I would like instructors to consider their purpose and value. When you are doing a discussion post, what is your goal? What do you want students to get out of that?
Yeah, I agree. I'd also say that me being a computer science major, I think of like the technical aspect of it personally, and it's just it would be a lot better if there was some way to integrate it into an instant messaging type system where, or like something like Slack, where people could post in real time responses to other people and then have a conversation back and forth. Because with the current system, how it is, it's basically just a forum board. So you just post your thing, and then someone has to refresh the page to see that what you posted, and then etc., like that over and over again. So it's just kind of like, if you could see in real time someone responding to you, then you could respond back instead of just like this waiting game like people have been saying, where you're just like, okay, maybe I'll wait a day or so and then see if someone replied to me. And yeah, okay.
Yeah, I like that idea that Ramsey had, and I also agree with Teresa. In a lot of ways, discussion posts and responses for me are like the chores I need to do to make sure they get done. You know what I mean? By the end of the week, like it's not something that I necessarily look forward to. I do like the material and that stuff, but it ends up feeling like so much more stress. And I get like I want to be able to interact with people, especially in this sort of environment we're in, where we're not getting to interact with people really regularly. So I do think it's important, but I think finding a different way to do it where it is more in real time would be a lot better.
I'm not sure about that real time thing. I already feel like it's death by email, and having one more thing pinging at my phone, I think would drive me crazy. I do think that alternative kind of thinking is really good, and there should be some kind of a way to change it. But I don't know if that's the way that I would be most suited to.
Yeah, for me with the discussion posts is I will do, you read an article or watch a video or something, and then you do your response. And then so I do my response and then I turn it off and I go do my other classes or do whatever I have to do for the week. And then I'll come back, I think in this current class I'm taking right now, we have it due on Wednesdays. And so Wednesdays, it's like my thing I do in the morning. I'll wake up Wednesday morning, I'll go online, I'll read other people's and I respond and then I'm done. And then I move on to my next class. So it really isn't that much of a time consuming thing for me personally. But like I would not enjoy like an interactive, like at the moment chat with other people like that. Just, because I want to like wake up at 6 in the morning Wednesday and do my, responses or do them Sunday night at midnight after, whatever, a couple cocktails or whatever. So like my own time would work better for me.
To me, they were beneficial, especially with writing, being that that was one of my weakest subjects. So I liked knowing, when I would post my paper, somebody would read it. Yes, it's time consuming and sometimes it feels forced because you're having to get on every so often to check and see if anybody's posted or, make sure that you've gotten all your discussions in. It does have its benefits because you get that interaction, but at the same time, you get the feedback that you need, not just from the professor, but from peers that may see something different that you don't see. But it is definitely time consuming and it does sometimes feel forced, especially when you've got so much other stuff going on and you're having to wait for somebody to post to you, or you're having to make sure that you get it all in one spot or else you'll forget and then it'll ding you with points and grade and all. So it kind of does have its purpose, but there is definitely some room for improvement. So
I think another note that I have on it too is what the replies, because a lot of times you get really empty replies that don't mean anything or add anything. I don't know what a good way to solve that would be because providing too many guidelines for that would kind of suppress it. But some kind of a way to make replies have meaning more than just like, yeah, looks good.
So it's already been kind of shared. I side with the don't really like using discussion. It does feel more like a chore, just another thing you kind of have to do. I get the idea. It gets students to read what they shared, and then people are reading yours and giving you good feedback. I get the idea, and I think it's great. I just don't know if it works, and I'm not sure how I would fix that. But I will say a positive thing that I've enjoyed about discussion questions is one of my teachers, every week they had a week for like questions, and then they had general like a help discussion. So if you ever needed help on a broad thing, you could just type in your question and people can check in. And then specifically for that, each week they had one. So people are like, hey, does anyone know how to do this? Or can someone help me with this? And I found that pretty helpful. I haven't needed to use it yet, but knowing that there's people that have used it and have gotten responses from it, I think is helpful.
And I'm gonna add to the whole discussion stuff. I had a professor that she would break up the group into like different sections and we would have discussions. That way we didn't have to post anything on the forum. So now if you didn't attend that Zoom meeting, then you had to reply to I think it was 3 people in that discussion forum. But if you did it in person, like if you attended Zoom class, I guess, then you wouldn't have to post anything, which I never missed any of my classes because I didn't want to post anything there. So
having that alternative made it useful. Yeah. Okay.
I find it really interesting. I just want to add, for me, because I decided to take online classes, I know everyone's not in the same situation. Having a Zoom class at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday morning or whatever, that does not seem remotely interesting whatsoever. I would prefer to do the discussion posts and not have to do it and have my own time during the day. So I could, help my children or go to the grocery store or whatever. And so for me, like, I don't want a Zoom class.
I wonder, and this is my own question, so you'll have to forgive me, but I wonder if, have you ever been assigned a discussion where you weren't asked to only type a response, but you were asked to use another sort of technology to communicate your response? Maybe that's adding another technology, instrument that just confuses everything. But I wonder if that might be an alternative or a useful alternative for this kind of, to make sure you're talking to one another, but also that you're doing it in a way that's meaningful.
I have actually done something like that before, where it was like a recorded video that you uploaded and let your peers comment on. It went okay. We only did it once. Which I don't know, spoke to like just trying it out or maybe its overall usefulness, but I don't know, it was interesting, but it was a lot more work, it felt like, because you were writing yourself a script, then you had to record, and there's like that anxiety about making yourself like be on recording and then letting your peers comment on it, which was terrifying. So I don't know if that was my experience or maybe somebody else's experience as well.
I liked it. I had one that you had to like, it's kind of like a little bio of yourself in a sense, and you had to like record yourself. And then I don't know how many times I recorded just to sound normal, I guess. I thought it was fun.
Yeah, I did. I took an art class and we had like a final project, and it was like kind of interactive. Like you had a video and you did like some pictures and stuff, and you posted it for the whole, like that was like your final project. I don't know if every week that would be something that could be done, but for a final project, it makes it a little more enjoyable than having like 100-question quiz or test or whatever.
I've never had that, but I feel like it would be great as an option, not like just this way or just in writing, but to be able to be like, hey, you can upload like even your voice to respond or a video or type it out, I think that'd be helpful.
I did that when I took ASL because that class is more for in person. So our professor for our final turned around and made a video of what she wanted us to sign for the final project. And so we ended up, it was nice because I could watch it over and over and over and master what I needed. It was confusing, but at the same time, it was nerve-wracking when you have to record yourself making the video and then feeling like, okay, was that good enough? Was it not good enough? But it was better than just writing out a paper or having extra work. It was just nice to turn on the recorder, record yourself, get the great feedback back, and then just work from there. So I enjoyed it a lot.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and take, I'm sorry, Samuel, please.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I've had towards the end when it was kind of like dead week online, we just had to do a group project kind of thing, and me and a classmate just made a little slideshow, and you just send it, and people would, look through it and that kind of thing. So it gave a different way of typing the discussion. So I guess it was a little more interactive, but yeah.
Thank you, and my apologies. I'm going to go ahead and take another question from the audience, if that's okay. And the question is, do you like to meet individually with the instructor via Zoom?
I do. I think it's helpful, especially like I had a professor, I think it was the beginning of the pandemic, hardly anybody would show up certain days. And then so it was just me and the professor, which I loved because I had one-on-one. And then whatever questions I had, she was able to answer anything for me and help me with whatever else I needed.
Yeah, I agree. I'm even just having office hours, like Zoom office hours. I had a professor that did that, and it was just so nice to know that if I was stuck or if I had a question, that I could just go in between this hour and have one-on-one time was really helpful.
Yeah, I had a teacher just like that as well, and it made it useful. Sometimes there'd be other students, and you'd wait your turn and listen in and hear their questions as well. But there's a few times where it was just me, and I can just go through some assignments or questions, and that made it nice.
I have to agree with that. It was very helpful, especially when you struggle and you have those hard classes, just having that one-on-one time, because maybe something that you're struggling, not just personally, but academically. And it was nice. I had a professor that would set those times there. You'd meet with them, and it didn't matter how much time you took, as long as you understood the subject, you were comfortable doing the subject. He would, extend that out and check in periodically with you. Okay, we had this discussion on Monday. How are you feeling, come Wednesday? Did you feel like you learned it, or should we meet again? And should we discuss it where you're struggling so I can get you past that next step? So it was definitely beneficial for me.
If no one else wants to respond, I'll move on to another question that just came in, and that is feedback on assignments more or less valuable in this online context? What sort of feedback would you like to see on your assignments? Are you looking mostly for assessment or for feedback that is more attentive to your work?
I like the feedback, especially like if for example, one of my classes right now, the professor just takes points off, but it doesn't specify like why or what did I do wrong, so I don't repeat it again if come final or midterm or anything like that. And then I have asked, but then he says we'll just have to meet on Zoom, and then he never responds to anything else. But yeah, I mean, I've had feedback before from professors, and they actually say, oh, should have been this way, not this way. That way
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Feedback is always better than just assessment. Like every time, it doesn't matter if it's online or in person or anything. That's how your students have the chance to improve. If it's just assessment, like you get a B. That doesn't tell me how to move forward at all. Especially with writing assignments where you have the opportunity to make comments even within the assignment. I think that's super helpful.
Yeah, I agree with the writing assignments, like having the, like the PDF or the Word doc where they're like making the notes within the assignment. I really appreciate that because, I'm 30 something years old, and, my last like writing class, English class, was like 15 years ago in high school. So it's just like, I don't remember what a comma slice is. I don't remember where to put this colon or whatever. So like, just tell me so I can change it for my, final draft. But one thing that Chris did that I just saw a couple days ago when I was looking through my grades is she did a response video to the last essay I did. And it was great. It was like 2 minutes. It was super great. She was like, I love this. I love this. You didn't change this like you were supposed to, but it was still great. So like, I really appreciated that. And then like, and the desire to learn on the grades, there is a feedback section for like all the online classes I've taken in any sort of whatever. And most of the teachers do a feedback if it's just a couple sentences. I took a Chicano studies class once, and our main assignment for the week was a discussion post with the responses and stuff. And so the discussion, we'd grade 10 points or whatever. And then the teacher would do like its own response to the grade and feedback and stuff. So I really appreciate the feedback.
Yeah, I agree too, especially with the video. The video feedback is really, really helpful. More so just because it like lets you know that too when the professor writes something back to you, but there's like an added kind of sensation of like, oh, he like really took the time, or she took the time to actually look at this, and then made the extra effort to record a video and all that. And like, it's so much easier, takes so much less effort to write like, great job, keep up the good work. Like you could just copy and paste that over and over again to every single student. So it definitely like makes you feel like, okay, he's actually just paying attention to me instead of just giving some sort of like standard answer that he gives to almost all other students. So yeah, I like that.
I do want to make a quick note about video responses, is they're not the most accessible without additional comment. So it's a good thing to do in addition to a written comment, but for people with hearing issues and not having subtitles or anything like that, doing a video response is not the most accessible way to access that.
Yeah, and just to sort of piggyback on what Ty said with having Chris as our instructor, I really love the feedback that's within like the PDF that she does. It's a lot better than just sort of getting like a little paragraph that says, hey, this was great, fix this, do this, whatever. It's kind of like bullet point in there. And the video feedback was great. If for no other reason, then I got to see her face and it felt like a personal interaction in this world of like, you're just a person by the screen and I don't know you other than words. So that was really nice. But I totally get with the accessibility factor that could be an issue.
Another thing I want to add to that is that, especially like depending on the subject that you're on. For example, like I liked when the math professor would write like their feedback. Hey, you don't forget your negatives, or you're supposed to turn this around, or flip it, or whatever, multiply here, divide here. And then when it comes to those subjects, I think it's very important for them to give you feedback on those, because come final, I mean, those questions are going to pop up on those finals, and you're going to keep on doing it wrong if nobody, really tells you what you're doing wrong, other than just taking points off.
Yeah,
I have to agree. Sorry.
Go ahead, Stacey.
I like the feedback. It makes a person feel value, that they're reading your work, they're giving you the great, details of what's wrong with the paper. You may forget something in writing that's very crucial to put your paper together. It's preparing you for the final paper. I enjoyed it a lot, especially because there may be something that I don't think of that, well, why is this so important to you? Why should it be important in your paper? Because you want your readers to know your paper wants to run evenly and have that good flow. And if you don't know that you're not doing it right, you continue to make those mistakes. So I found it very useful when I would get, the feedback and suggestions, or, how about wording it this way? And then that way you can kind of see where we're going with this. And so it was very beneficial.
Yeah, I'd say, I agree with, I think, almost all of you, or if not all of you. I think students like to receive feedback. It shows, for one, that the teacher's actually, engaging in the work that the student's doing. And I'm someone who, if I do something wrong, I want to be corrected and know how to improve from that. So with writing assignments, or for me with science classes and memorizing certain things, like come test day, I don't want to do something wrong. I'd rather be corrected early on. So yeah, I think feedback is very important for students.
Thank you. I'm going to take a question from one of our librarians. And she wants to know if you have received help from the librarians during the pandemic. I'm going to try to summarize it. And if you have, what was most helpful? And do you have suggestions or recommendations to the library that would help you during the pandemic?
I have. And let me tell you, they are very, very helpful, especially if you don't really know how to navigate the whole research. Like if you're doing a research and you don't know where to look or what type of words, and then they actually help with, maybe try word it this way, maybe put this one first and then this other word second, and then maybe you'll get more information that way. And they are a big help.
I don't live in the city where my school is. I live in a different city. So the library hasn't ever been an option for me. I don't know if there's like, a phone call, like a number I can call to call a librarian, or I don't know, something along those lines, but it's never, I've never like utilized any of the help they have. I didn't even know that there was help. So I didn't know there was really options for online students that could use library. So that's something maybe with the teacher can say like, oh, if you need help, here's a library.
I've used library services at Lewis Clark State College before, and they've been super helpful. Like Teresa said, like keyword searching and hunting down different articles is really useful. And I don't know if that usefulness has changed much, at least here during the pandemic, where research appointments are still ongoing. I think it's the same.
Is it fair to say that the rest of you have not received library help? I see a no library. No library, okay. Okay, so I hope that helps to answer your question. I have another one about group work. How do the students feel about group project work? Has going online made organizing groups easier, or is group work equally or perhaps more frustrating than usual?
I've had a good experience with group work because we just have our own little like Zoom meeting, and then we just kind of like divide our work, and then we just put it all together, and then we just get it done.
I think it might even be easier to do now because, like you said, you just make your Zoom meeting. You don't have to wait on the late guy at the library forever because it's just logging onto a Zoom call. And that way you get that immediate face-to-face interaction. You can share your screen and you work on your Google Doc and all those different pieces. Or it might actually be easier now.
I've never done any group work besides like a group discussion where like you post your paper and they'll edit it, you know, a couple different people edit it. But since I want to be online only, I don't want to really talk to anyone else. I don't see that to be a benefit whatsoever. You know, like I want to do my homework at 9 o'clock. I don't want to have to like worry about doing a Zoom meeting with, you know, Teresa and Daly. You know, I hope I pronounced her name right. I'm sorry. So like I don't want to do any group work stuff.
I'd say for group work, it was easier than in person because, so let's say you have 2 lectures on Zoom where you have to meet with your whole class and, you know, you're doing a live Zoom with your teacher. They just cut out one of those lectures and you just go into a little small group. So, you know, people are going to be there. You can focus with your group, and I think that made it easier. I'd just say on the flip side, I think it's hard for students to just kind of know when they're walking in to signing up for a class. I mean, it's all online, but you don't know necessarily what the environment's going to be like. So, for instance, there's some students that don't want to do any interaction. They just want to do their work at whatever time. And then I think there are some students that like to still try to keep that in-person environment who would prefer meeting with other students and teachers and that.
I know with PCC, when you're registering for classes, there's online only, there's hybrid, and before it was in person. So if I'm looking for my online only class, I don't want to do any group work. So maybe we could specify like, oh, this is a hybrid class. There's going to be the Zoom meetings and all that stuff. You can see people face to face. So maybe like if it's a specific online only class, you know, let's just do it at our own pace. But if it's the hybrid, then we can get together and, you know, work with each other.
I wanted to branch off something that Sam said just a minute ago too. For people that do not want to participate in the group work when it's required, it is much harder to get in contact with them now. Where you might have been able to like catch them during class time and be like, hey, how's it going? They can now safely ignore your messages if they don't want to participate.
Yeah, and kind of going in with that, I've only been online learning, so it's all I know. So I can't really compare it to being in person and doing group work, whether it's easier or harder. In my women's studies class, we had groups that met the whole term. It was the same group, and we would meet via like Google Hangouts and do a video and discuss whatever. And that was really great for the interaction. But as far as the grading goes, when you have those people that don't want to show up or don't want to do the work, I know this is maybe a separate thing, but yeah, I'm not a fan of groups. But in my math class this term, we have groups that we separate into, and that's actually really nice because you have a group to like work with and talk to. So I'm sort of still split on the group thing, and I don't really have anything to compare it to.
Yeah, so for me, I've only had one group work assignment online so far for a computer science course, and it was definitely like interesting, like more engaging than non-group work because you know it's a little more challenging to like, especially in programming, to like mesh everyone's code into one functional program. But I think definitely going back to like what I said earlier with the real-time kind of instant messaging thing, I think doing group work over like the messaging system in like Canvas, for instance, is just terrible. And I know that there's like some groups that did it that way, and it's like yeah, it's just, again, it's that waiting game where you're just waiting for someone else to send a reply. So I think definitely doing it over something like Slack or Discord or Zoom. But if you don't want to like meet face to face, then just doing it on an instant messaging server is definitely a much better solution than doing just doing a group kind of back and forth kind of thing.
I think for me, the only problem I had was just finding the time to meet, and making sure that everybody had their assignments done by the time we met or meet. And then, like Miranda said, just making sure somebody is doing their part and, making the assignment come together. That's the only thing. I mean, it was really nice to have that interaction, but it was just a lot of time, with full-time parents, full-time employees, just finding the time to actually have that meeting and then sitting down and discussing all the assignments.
I forget who said it earlier, but setting aside like a class day to make room for the group work assignments might be a good strategy.
Quick follow-up question about the library. If you didn't receive any information on the library, was that because you didn't get any from the library or the instructor? No information about the library, period?
So PCC has let me know about the library, and so has Chris. She's put in some of the lectures or some of the online things that we read about the library help.
I think with us, we knew it was there in the beginning because we do, certain things to explore the library. But then when the pandemic happened, staff were not there, and it was not knowing if they were available or if there was actually somebody that could respond to you with questions. I mean, it was just not knowing what was happening, just knowing that school was closed, staff was home, people working from home, but I guess nobody really elaborated that that was an option.
And I see we're coming at the end of our hour, and I wonder if we could close our time together today by answering our final predetermined question. And that is, what advice would you give instructors to help students learn through the pandemic?
Go ahead. I'll go second. Okay, I'll go first. I think my number one piece of advice is maintain communication and contact with your students. A lot of times you can feel like on this end of the computer that you are alone and you're struggling and you don't know what to do about it. So being able to reach out to students either through Zoom, through email, through something, just to kind of check in, make sure that they are understanding the material, that they are mentally well, that they're hanging in there, I think is a really key piece of advice.
I would say more like in the aspect of like not giving us a lot of like extra homework, I guess, and making us print this thing, okay, scan it and submit it at this. Like it's either, it's more difficult to, okay, download this program and then now you have to scan it and then make sure it's readable because if not, you have to redo it again. So I guess like less technology issues, I guess, in a sense, if they can avoid that and have more patience. I think patience is a lot to have, I guess, in this time right now. And don't get upset if students ask a lot of questions because not everybody knows. I mean, that's the reason why we're in that class.
Yeah, I agree with Teresa, and a lot of stuff that I had written down, actually, we already touched on. So like videos of lectures, I had a professor do, even if it's not like a Zoom meeting, but like at the end of the week, there'd be like a YouTube video or like a video kind of wrapping up like what we had talked about that week or what in like her words. So we could just see it. And also my psych professor, of course, he's also a therapist, so that might help, but he's really always checks in with us, is very lax and sort of relaxed on like due dates. It's not like, you know, making it super easy, but understanding that we're all in sort of this constant state of anxiety and, you know, unknowing. And I think sometimes the misconception is that like, oh, well, because they're at home, that maybe like I need to put more work on them because they're just there anyway. So, you know, they're not having to come to class. So I just need to make sure that they're getting their 4 credits worth. I had a meditation class that I swear had more work than my 4 credit writing class my first term. I think trying to like make up like, well, I don't want to think it's an easy 1 credit for meditation. And it was like so much work. So I think, yeah, just keeping it comfortable, but still challenging is a big deal. And yeah, in office hours, I think that's a great idea.
One thing
I
I
would
have
say like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, okay, thanks. One thing I've noticed before the pandemic versus after the pandemic with online classes, I have noticed there's so much more homework after during the pandemic. I feel like maybe there was like some sort of audit or something. They're like, oh, let's go through our online classes and see if they're actually learning anything. And then like now it's like just like too much. You know, I have one class where I have a discussion post, responses, a lab, a quiz, like 2 hours of lecture videos. And it's just like, oh my God, that's way too much. And since I don't know if this happens in regular in-person classes, but like, let's look at the calendar. Maybe like, you know, the election's on Tuesday. Let's, you know, we know it's going to be a really heavy, stressful week. Let's not do homework that week. Or Thanksgiving is, you know, in a couple weeks. Like, let's make sure that we're not doing homework that week, or, you know, an easy week or something along those lines. I think with online classes, there's just like, oh, it's this start date to this start date, and you have the modules. There's no kind of like, oh, let's look at the calendar and like week 3 is Christmas, so maybe let's not do anything for Christmas. I mean, that's not a good example because we're off, but you know, along different lines, something like that.
Yeah, so I was just gonna say that maybe find some way, like I was thinking, do like a small amount of extra credit to incentivize students to actually like maybe attend a Zoom kind of meeting where they can actually like talk about the state of where they are like in the class and if they need help with something. Because I feel like a lot of students, they'll just kind of allow things to slip by and like keep going, not really changing their approach because they don't really feel like I'm going to get anything out of it. And I feel like if you just have like a little extra incentive so that they actually do want to talk to their instructor, I think it will cause more of them to actually seek help or seek advice on specific things they just don't understand that could potentially help them be better students. So
I have to agree with a lot that's been said. Just having patience, not having high expectation that students don't have. I mean, like teachers, they have things that they have to do. They have a lot of students. Not all of us have that extra time to get all these assignments done. It felt at the end of the semester when all this happened, it felt like everything needed to be the Black Lives Matter and stuff like that. It was just, and not sure if I was coming or going, just knowing that I was trying to get school done, trying to focus with my family, trying to keep us safe and maintain my household. So I think just understanding that students are going to ask questions, have patience, don't expect a lot of homework, especially when everybody just had to up and go online. And so we all have, some of us don't take 2 classes, some of us take 6, and it's just a lot of stuff to learn in a short period of time. So I was appreciative to a lot of the teachers, and I'm still appreciative because it's a learning curve for all of us, not just students, but it just knowing that life is happening, and like they say, we're all in this together, and we all have to understand that we're not all living the same life. So I think just having a lot of patience with students and knowing that they're going to reach out to you and having that comfort to be able to reach out to you is great too.
My two big takeaways was just having those required Zoom calls and making those teachers have their own personal videos. Try not to just pull videos from YouTube or other things. As I shared, I'm someone who still likes to have that classroom environment. So having required Zooms does help a lot with that. And it gives me that engagement and to be able to ask questions right away. And then personal videos, I shared that. I can notice a lot more of the effort from a teacher, and then it makes me want to work hard as well.
All right. Well, I just want to again say thank you to all of our panelists here today. Thank you for your time and effort and energy and letting us learn from you. All right. I'm going to close out now, but thank you everyone for attending, and please make your way through the semester as best as possible. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Do I have audio, Patty?